What is something you were surprised to find was a deal breaker for you? Perhaps you had never thought of it until it happened or was brought up on a date or by a significant other. What was a surprising deal breaker? The devil's advocate persona. I dated a guy for about 6 months who had this persona. At first, it wasn't that bad. We would discuss various topics, and I was a pre-law student who thought nuance and intellectual discourse was fun and exciting. Eventually, it got absolutely exhausting. I would have a rough day with one of my coworkers, and he would start arguing from the coworker's perspective. I would say a random thought about something mid-episode of a show, and he would pause to debate about it. Despite me saying I wasn't in the mood, he couldn't help himself. I'm sure there are people out there who are attracted to this type of persona, but I'm certainly not one of them. He had a shelf in his bedroom with a lot of interesting books, some I'd read and some I hadn't. I remember there being a lot of Kerouac, Jack London, Cormac McCarthy, etc. I started asking what he thought of various titles on the shelf, and after a few, I haven't read that one yet, he eventually admitted he hadn't read any of them. Instead, he had them because they seemed like books a guy like me should own. I'd never come across anyone before who owned books as a type of virtue signaling? Aesthetic? Not even sure what you'd call that, but I wasn't impressed. I asked to borrow one of the books, went home with it, and never returned. I don't remember the guy's name, but the book is still on my shelf. I've read it twice and loaned it to 2 friends. I thought I was into passionate people or someone who would do anything to help their friends. Turns out it's less fun when passion projects and/or friends are prioritized over me constantly. Not working to improve yourself. Not just physically but career-wise, or trying to learn something new, or trying a new hobby, etc. Being absolutely convinced that the way they were raised is the one right way to raise a child. It seems to translate into a lot of parenting advice before they've even met the child and, unless they also happen to be an education or healthcare professional, I have very little patience with that. Being super close to his family and wanting to stay near them. I thought it was very charming at first, family values. Then I came to learn that he expected to never leave the state and always be within an hour's driving distance and visit every weekend, and my grad school plans, made before we got together, and career were 100% going to require me to move outside the state. Nothing wrong with wanting to stay close to your family. But for me, in this case it was a deal breaker. Being on their phone too much. Selfishness. Not wanting to grow as a person and better themselves. Being impatient or easily irritated by simple mistakes. Eating only to survive. I absolutely love food. I cook every night, spend time researching regional cuisines and recipes, read books on food history, etc. I never really thought about it though until I dated a guy who just looked at food as sustenance. He was a bodybuilder, so what restaurants we could go to all depended on the serving sizes. All meals had to be specifically a meat with some veggies and carbs on the side. When I cooked he'd thank me for cooking but wouldn't really care what the food was. Nowadays I'm married to someone who's just as obsessed with food as I am and it's the best. He's recently gotten super into Mexican cooking, so I'm planning on getting him a tortilla press for Christmas. Throwing out cigarette butts. I legit dumped my ex because he kept throwing his cigarettes out wherever he walked because someone is getting paid to clean it up anyway. Asterisk 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 nope. It never even occurred to me before. Not being a fussy eater. When me and my husband see fussy eaters on TV we agree that we couldn't live with that. Most of our bonding time is spent going to new restaurants, trying new recipes and being adventurous with our food. He struggles enough with the fact that he loves offal and fish and I can only eat certain offal when it's in things and I struggle with oily, bony fish. He treats himself on the odd occasion when he's home alone. Inability to clean up after oneself and/or poor money management. I am not saying leaving clothes on the floor after a long day, I mean I made steak and potatoes and sent him leftovers for work, and he let them rot in his car while he bought pizza for lunch instead, but couldn't afford to pay bills. And when I say let them rot in his car, I mean he didn't bring the containers back in after work either. I had to collect them and throw them away weeks later. There's also many more examples. Too many. But general cleanliness is not something I thought I'd ever have to list as a deal breaker. Overprotectiveness. There's a point at which it just becomes very controlling. He would get paranoid even if I just spoke to another guy, just talking. He would keep asking me to not talk to other people, he would never explain why, just trust me, just stay away from him. It seemed like he was trying to isolate me in a way. Looking back now, he might have been a little insecure, but the extent that he went to ended up ruining our bond. Hunting. I'm okay with people not loving animals or being vegan, vegetarian, but I quickly found out when I was dating that a relationship with a guy who enjoys hunting, even if they ate their kills, would never work. Being cheap. I totally get being tight with money because I do it myself, but if I want to buy myself something then I should be able to without complaint, especially if I buy them something, all the bills have been paid already. Also, I had an ex who would send me to check the scary noises because he was too scared too. Like, if you're gonna make me go then you better come with me, cause all I can really do is scream if there is someone. Guy going for his dream career. I'm one to advocate to work a career you love, and choose carefully, and yet, the one guy the first dated who did that, I broke up with him. He was a musician. A good one, but not successful. He was already struggling for years when I met him. And was still struggling after we started seeing each other. When he refused to give up on his dream career, or even take a part-time job because he had to focus on his music, I couldn't handle it. I saw a future where I would kill myself working to sustain the whole family financially, while he would still be playing in his guitar, believing he'll be the next Eric Clapton if we gave him just a little more time, just his chance once. I noped out of that. I have a messed up family dynamic, so I think I unknowingly sought out others who had a close family that I could be part of. Extremely large ********, probably. The thought never really crossed my mind that I would find something, big or small, that I couldn't work with if I liked the person enough. It was a shame. He's a really sweet guy too. A homophobe. I identify as a straight woman and I'd like to think I'm open-minded. I can't stand homophobes, and a man that's homophobic is a big no. Incompatible texting styles. Daily contact is important to me. I want good morning, good night, and how was your day texts. It helps me stay connected and feel they are interested and involved. Not being on time. My ex would say he's on his way with a distance of many 7 miles and still not get home until 2.5 hours later. Or if there was an event we had to go to that wasn't work-related, he put no effort to be on time. His friends were amazed I got him to a graduation party 15 minutes late as they didn't expect us for at least another hour. He didn't eat vegetables. Like, seriously, are you 5? I actually gave him the benefit of the doubt, but he turned out to be a cheating scumbag, so that made the decision for me in the end. He's probably got scurvy now, lol. I will never date anyone again who is a gamer. I literally work in game development, so this one surprised me. But my ex always chose his games and PC over spending time with me. Every night when we lived together I would go to bed alone, and even when I would come home from school and work he wouldn't even look up from his game to ask me how my day was. I get that this is all dependent on him just being crappy, but honestly I don't think I could date anyone that hardcore games again just because of the association. Honestly, it sounds stupid, but my ex didn't drink coffee. He didn't understand my need for coffee in the morning and would get annoyed, not believe me when I complained about the symptoms of caffeine withdrawal and needing my morning coffee. Now I'm not going to say this was the end of our relationship, but I vowed never to date another man or woman who wasn't at least aware of the very real addiction I have.